Chapter 4. The Assyrians conquered the northern lands not long after the Lord had me deliver his message to King Ahaz. The people of the northern kingdom are known as the lost 10 tribes because they never returned to Israel as a people. Their righteous descendants will be gathered once more during the end time because the Lord will remember his covenant with Abraham. King Ahaz never repented and chose to serve as a vassal king under the Assyrian king. He was replaced by his son Hezekiah about 25 years later. I was an old man when Sennacherib the king of Assyria began to fulfill the second part of the prophecy that I delivered to Hezekiah's father. It was in the 14th year of the reign of Hezekiah when the Assyrians came up against the defended cities of Judah and took them. The king of Assyria sent his servant Rabshakeh with a great army of 185,000 men to Jerusalem while he stayed with his army in a siege against the fortified city of Lachish. The Assyrian army was so large that the king had the luxury of dividing his horses. Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah the overseer of the palace, Shebna the scribe, and the son of Joazaph, the recorder went out to meet the Assyrian.
Tell your king Hezekiah that the great king of Assyria says the following: In whom do you trust? That you have rebelled against me? Do you trust in the broken reed of Egypt? If you lean on them, the reed will pierce your hands. It always turns out bad for any that are stupid enough to trust the Pharaoh king of Egypt.
Hezekiah had chosen not to follow in his father's footsteps and serve as a vassal king to the Assyrians. Instead, he had chosen to put his faith in God and the Davidic covenant. He knew that he could not be a righteous king if he was controlled by a wicked one. The Egyptians had the strongest military in the region, much greater than the kingdom of Judah's, but as the Assyrian indicated, they had proven themselves to be unreliable allies.
I would even give you horses to fight against us if you had the riders. Without riders of your own, how can you begin to trust that Egypt will send chariots and horsemen? I come without your Lord to destroy this land. Even so, your God has told me to come.
The Assyrian said with a smile. He spoke in the language of the Jews. It was obvious to everyone that in his mind the defeat of Jerusalem was inevitable.
You can speak in the Assyrian language, we understand it. Please don't speak in the language of the Jews where the people on the walls can hear.
Eliakim replied. The Assyrian smiled, and then he laughed uncontrollably.
Do you think my master sent me to speak to only you and your king? No, he sent me to tell all those that sit on the walls that they will eat their own dung, and drink their own urine.
From the Assyrians' remarks, it was obvious that they didn't know about the tunnel Hezekiah built to supply the city with fresh water. The king had done everything he could to fortify Jerusalem. He had even paid the Assyrians with gold from the temple doors. The Assyrian turned to face the walls of Jerusalem.
Hear the words of the great king of Assyria,
he shouted. Eliakim, Shebna, and the son of Joah remained silent, following King Hezekiah's instructions.
He can't save you. Don't listen to him. He will say that the Lord will surely deliver us. He will say that this city shall not be delivered into the hand of the king of Assyria. The king has authorized me to make an agreement with you. If you will come out of the city, everyone shall eat of his vine and from his fig tree. You will drink water from his own cistern until you arrive in a new land like your own with corn and wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Beware your king. Has any god delivered the lands out of the hand of the king of Assyria? No god has delivered any of the lands. What makes you think your God can deliver you?
When the Assyrian finally finished his speech, Eliakim, Shebna, and the son of Joah returned into the city, rent their clothes, and returned to Hezekiah to report to him all that they had heard. When Hezekiah heard the report, he rent his clothes and went into the house of the Lord to pray. It was then that Hezekiah sent his men to find me.
Hezekiah says that the day of trouble is upon us. The Assyrians have rebuked the Lord, but his children don't have the strength to do anything about it. It may be that the Lord heard the words of Rabshakeh, whom the king of Assyria sent to insult the living God. Pray that the Lord has heard for the remnant that remains.
Say this to your master, thus saith the Lord. Be not afraid of the blasphemous words that you have heard. I will send a blast on him, and I will cause him to fall by the sword in his own land. Thus saith the Lord, the king of Assyria shall not come into this city, nor shoot an arrow there. By the way that he came, he shall return, and he shall not come into the city, for I will defend this city to save it for mine own sake, and for my servant David's sake," I replied. "Whenever the Lord says he will do something for my own sake, it's because he has made a covenant that he cannot break." On the night of the Passover an angel of the Lord went forth into the camp of the Assyrians and smote 185,000. When the king arose the next morning they were all dead corpses. Sennacherib the king of Assyria departed and returned the way he came. He dwelt at Nineveh. His own sons killed him with a sword just as the Lord prophesied while he was worshipping a false god in the house of Nisroch. While the victory at Jerusalem was a miracle, the land of Judah was in ruins just as the Lord said it would be. The land of Judah will not return to its full glory until after the house of Israel has been gathered and the day of vengeance has passed. Like my son's name says, only a remnant returned, only those that relied on the Lord and his servant Hezekiah.